Hello, hello. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening, wherever you may be. Oh, okay. I'm starting to see that we have people joining in. Hello, hello. If you're just joining, give a wave. Let me know in the chat if you can hear, if you can see where you're joining from. See, we have 4 viewers at the moment. Taking people some time to join in, that's fine. Wednesday morning, people are busy. Gonna give another minute or two for some people to join in. And we have our first message in the chat from Prince Lion. Hello, hello, welcome. Hello. I don't know if that's help or hello from Reed. Um, hello/help from Singapore. I'm guessing it's hello. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, what time is it by you, wherever you're joining from? That's an interesting question. What time is it now? Here it's morning. Here it's about 10 a.m. And we already have our first question. Thank you, Prince Lion. So what we're going to do today is, hello, David. It is 5:03. Awesome. Okay, 5:03 is a comfortable time. That's like right after work hours. So, Prince, thanks for the question. So what we're going to do is first I'm going to go through just some kind of announcements, general Wix news. Hello, Deep Purple. We'll do that for about 5 minutes just to give people like a chance to join in and catch on. And you can start sending your questions in the chat. And then what I'll be doing is I'll be going through the questions in the order that they're sent. I will be giving preference to members that ask questions, so channel members. And I will also try and give as many people as possible the opportunity to ask. So if you ask several questions in a row, I might only answer the first one and then move on to some other people's questions and circle back if we have time later on. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing today in this session. And as in the name, it's primarily Q&A. So that's what we're going to be doing. But I'm going to take some time in the beginning just to give a few announcements and just go through some Wix news to let people join in, and also because I think it's some interesting stuff. I don't know how many of you get this kind of developers update to your email. They send it out every month, and it's primarily for so like within the Wix developer ecosystem. So we have developers that are developing for Wix websites, so like adding Velo to sites, even very advanced stuff, but kind of within a Wix website. And there's the developer ecosystem for people who are building essentially applications for Wix. And Wix kind of differentiates a little bit between the two. So this is like a newsletter that goes out for the second kind of developer that I mentioned. So more people who are developing apps, but there still is always some interesting stuff here that's worth taking a look at. For example, like a lot of the news about blocks also gets sent here in this newsletter, and blocks is kind of a technology that sits in the middle of those two things because it can be equally used and utilized by people who are just developing Wix websites and by people who are developing apps for Wix websites. So that's an interesting kind of crossroad here. And the design, so they changed a little bit about the design of the editor inside of blocks. And it's all kind of written here, and you can kind of get updates. I always feel like I'm getting these updates a little late because like this roundup comes at the end of the month. But usually I've noticed the change already before. I mean, not for everything here. There's a lot of information here, but for some of the more core things, like because I'm using Wix every day, I tend to notice these changes before I actually get the newsletter, and it's more of like a summary of all the things I noticed this month. Um, but yeah, definitely also learning some new stuff. This month they had the DevCon in India. Did anybody here join the DevCon? I would love to hear if anybody here got a chance to join DevCon. That would be really interesting. Um, this is the second DevCon. It's actually Dev Studio Con. Now, Wix recently has a trend where they kind of just stick Wix Studio into everything that they possibly can. Um, they're really kind of pushing it as much as they can. Like I'm doing, they're currently having a challenge, an e-commerce site with some Velo code challenge with dev.to. It's kind of like a developer blogging platform. And obviously it has to be Wix Studio. So they're really, really trying to push Wix Studio very strong now. Even though the developer experience on Wix Classic and Wix Studio is almost identical, except for like the Wix IDE, which is like reverted back to beta now. There isn't, from a developer perspective, like if you're going into Wix websites and like building web apps and writing code, um, the differences between Wix and Wix Studio are like minuscule. Even to some extent, Wix Classic is a little more reliable than Wix Studio. It tends to be a little less buggy, at least at this point. But, Wix has their own priorities and they're really pushing Wix Studio everywhere. So that was the Wix, what was it called? Dev Studio Con. Dev Studio Con in India. I unfortunately cannot go. Um, I was in India about 2-ish months ago, 3 almost. So just missed it. Um, yeah, but if you went to the DEF CON, I'm really curious to see how it looked. I saw some stuff on like Twitter/X. Looked pretty cool. I don't know if there were as many like big product drops as there were last time. By the way, just welcome to all the new people who are joining in the chat. Mr. Samadon, where are you joining us from? Hello, hello. And hello to Nikita. Thank you for the questions. I'm just going through some kind of news and announcements, and we'll be starting with the questions in a few minutes. Oh, Deep Purple, I'm sorry you didn't make it, but maybe you'll get a chance again. Yeah, this is the second, so kind of DevCon. It was the last one was in New York. I did make it to that one 2 years ago. It was super cool. And I think that I haven't seen any of the keynotes yet from this new one, the one that was just in India, but I get the impression that there were less like kind of big product drops. For those who remember, in the last Wix DevCon in New York, essentially they dropped blocks. That was the big news then. Um, and yeah, I don't know if there was anything to that scale at this time. Hello, Farouk, welcome. And yeah, so that's DevCon. That was just recently. There are a lot of other cool stuff going on. This is the Wix Studio Forum again. This is kind of the only Wix forum, but it's still the Wix Studio Forum. Um, yeah, and like so Noah, a good guy, he sends out kind of these, I think they're weekly. Yeah, weekly roundup it's called. And I usually kind of tap into that to get some interesting updates. So the Figma to Wix Studio plugin, I just released a video about that. This is really cool, the selling Wix and Wix Studio templates. So originally they had released the option for partners kind of within a partner marketplace, but now you can, to my understanding, I haven't tried it yet, but you can essentially sell a Wix website that you created um, as a template independently. So you somehow, let me see here, if we can just check out the details for a second. Um, yeah, so it's kind of like this. So like you kind of template zip file download, you download it as a zip file and they'll get a URL and they go to that URL and they copy the template. Again, I haven't tried it yet, but it's super, super exciting. Something that I personally asked for in the past, and I know others have been interested in, and it's really, um, this is big because I do sell templates, but now it's kind of in this very convoluted way where the person purchased the template, we have to copy the site and add them as a collaborator and send it over. So it could take even a few days, like with all the admin work, to actually get the person the template after they make the purchase. We try to do it as quickly as possible, but sometimes it takes time. And now apparently it'll be able to be streamlined a lot more. So that's really cool. And maybe I'll be investing more time in creating templates now that this is possible. Definitely a possibility there. Some more interesting stuff that came up. The CMS expressions. I have a video coming out about that soon. I'm trying to create more videos about some of these new updates that are coming out by Wix. I think it's really interesting. Yeah, so I recommend checking this out once in a while. I'm not going to go through every single update here because there are some big, some small. On a personal level, so I just dropped a new app into the Wix app market. This is one that I actually don't have. So a lot of the apps that I create are inspired by videos that I have, or I have a video that kind of accompanies the app. This one is actually one that just came out of the blue, so I don't really have a video that explains how this is done, and I don't really have another way to share it with you guys except for through this live stream. Essentially allows you to download allows users on your site to download CMS collections as a CSV. So you're welcome to check it out. And if you go through the Wix Wiz website, so we have this page, the wixwiz.com/Wix apps. I'll send the link here in the chat. And essentially, this is all the apps that I've built. And some of you might be familiar with some because they do reflect a lot of the videos here on the channel. But if you go through this page, then you can also easily just like find the documentation for the specific apps, which is like an explanation of how to install it and how to use it. And also you have these trial codes. Just because of how the Wix app pricing works, I usually set up most of the apps so that they're like a freemium style. But if you want to try all of the app functionality for free before you purchase the premium version, then you can use any of these codes here and essentially try it for 1 month free, like the full premium version of the app, just to make sure you're happy with what you're getting and it's what you need. Yeah, and if anybody has, suggestions about the apps or feedback or is having issues, you're welcome to reach out via the website. You could fill out a contact form, just select templates and apps, and yeah, I personally monitor that because I'm very highly invested in these applications. So hit me up. Okay, so that is pretty much updates. We're 15 minutes in, and I will start taking a look at the questions that we have here in the chat. So thank you to everyone who sent questions. If you're watching and you have a question, you haven't sent it yet, please send it in the chat so that we have what to do today. And let's take a look. So I'm starting with, I don't see any questions from members at the moment. So I'm going to start with Prince Lion. It's the first question here in the chat. Does Wix have any app for viewing all the payments from our payment gateway? Okay, so I don't know what you mean by your payment gateway. If you're using a payment gateway that's going through Wix, so let me just go over here. Let me go to the dashboard here of this site. 1 second, should save this, new site. Okay, let's check out the dashboard. So generally, to answer your question, if you're using Wix Pay or a payment provider that goes essentially through the native Wix system, let me just make sure you're not answering my questions here below. Razorpay. You added the API and secret into your Wix account. So, okay, so to answer your question, generally no. Like if you built a third-party integration, not using the payment provider API, SPI, sorry. If you just kind of use your own API key and secret and you built out in the backend some kind of integration, then unless I don't think that you have any record of those payments in Wix. And I mean, you don't have a record, and I don't even think there's a way that you could report those so that you would see them kind of inside of Wix. So basically, you would need to refer to your payment provider. Maybe you could build out kind of a dashboard page where you use their API in order to get the information about all the transactions and display it in your Wix dashboard. But if you're building your integration externally to the payment provider SPI, then you won't see it inside the dashboard. Let me just point out what the payment provider SPI is. That's this right over here. This is the REST documentation. I want the Velo documentation. So basically this, and I have a video about this released recently, this allows you to essentially integrate a payment provider with the native Wix payment system. So essentially you'd set up this integration with code, and then inside of your dashboard where you kind of accept payments. Let me see here, payment settings. Yeah, so essentially then you'll see that payment as an option here, and you'll be able to connect it. And then if you set up everything correctly, then you'll see a record of all the transactions inside of Wix. But if you haven't used this system, then Mr. Samadan. So I'm just to clarify, because Mr. Samadan said, I think all payment transactions can check on the Wix dashboard. So that is correct if you are using a Wix payment provider. Um, so yeah, then you are correct that you can see all the transactions. But if you built your own integration, then essentially you only have what you built, and then Wix won't have any knowledge of that unless you inform them, essentially. So that is about that. And you asked for the video that I just talked about. Sure. Let me find that for you. And then we're going to be going on to the next question. And that is the link to the video. For whoever's curious about what I just was talking about, the whole way to connect a payment provider via the native Wix system, that is the link that I just sent in the chat. Awesome. Welcome to all the new people who are joining in. Feel free if you want to say hi and let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you want to leave a question in the chat, you're welcome to. I'm moving on to the next question, which is from Nikita. Hello, is it possible to set different prices for bookings in Wix Bookings? For example, if someone reserves 2 hours in a row, they get a 10% discount, or if they reserve all 6 spots out of 6, they get a special price. How can something like this be implemented? That's a great question. I don't want to speak to details because every use case is very unique. And also, Wix Bookings has tons of settings, and I can't say that I know every single setting inside of Wix Bookings. So I'm not sure if this is something that you can do natively within Wix Bookings. What I can share with you is about how to customize Wix Bookings. So essentially, the major Wix business applications, so like stores, bookings, they all have essentially the option to be customized using Velo code. So let's just Wix Bookings Velo API. And Bookings has a very robust API. You'll see here we have Wix Bookings front end, Wix Bookings version 1, 2, and backend. Okay, so all of this is just stuff to help you essentially customize the Wix Bookings experience. So using these APIs, you can do a bunch of things. So you can check out a booking, get different checkout options. Let's take a look at different things that you have here. You can get essentially the different slots that are available. I was just helping somebody with Wix Bookings recently, and we were doing a customization. Essentially, they had joined the live stream last month. They were trying to customize so that if there's a booking, then the slots afterwards, that essentially you'd only be able to pick from the slot right after, and not be able to pick from the entire day, because then they'd have like lots of bookings that are spread out throughout the day. So we were working on that and customizing it, and it's not exactly what you said, but essentially the approach to all these things is quite similar. And yeah, I would recommend taking a look at right over here. So you have introduction. Not that one, but this one. I think it's, oh, here, sample flow. Yeah, so here they have like a sample flow of how you could essentially build a custom experience in Wix Bookings using the API, but you'd have to build out your own custom interface. and interact with the APIs to get the data about the actual bookings and the actual slots that are available and let people pick from them. I would, before I jumped in and started doing it, it's usually worth doing some research to make sure that you have all the APIs that you need. So, for example, you want to offer a 10% discount or a special price. So I would double check to make sure that there is a way to, let's say, apply a coupon within Wix Bookings, which I think that there is, but let's see. Wix Bookings. Let's look at Velo. So this is for stores. I'm pretty sure there's a way. I think I've seen, yeah. I would double check that to make sure that you can apply a coupon using Velo. Also, what I would recommend checking out is there is one Bookings SPI as well. So let me Wix Bookings SPI Velo. No. Yeah, so that you also have this calculate price. So essentially what this does is allows you to create to calculate a price based on some custom business logic for your booking. I haven't specifically used this before, but this might also be an avenue for getting special pricing based on the conditions around the booking. So I know that that is not a very concrete answer, but yeah, you have to understand that for each use case, you have to do the research inside of those different customization options and check what's possible and then implement the customization. So again, I haven't done anything specifically exactly like what you're asking, but I have done various Wix Bookings customizations and they all take a certain approach among what I've just mentioned. So I hope that that gives some direction. Um, yeah, let me know if you have any follow-up questions to that. Okay, so I'm going now to the next question. I don't know if Nikita was even still online, but let's go to the next question is from Farouk. Can I redirect visitors to a subdomain from a domain hosted in Wix? Um, so Farouk, it would be helpful if you can clarify like the scenario and what you're trying to redirect. Like, are you trying to redirect all the traffic to your domain from your domain to a subdomain? Essentially, essentially, if your domain is hosted by Wix, let's see if I have access to that on this free site. So you should have access to the DNS records. Let's see if I can access that here. Yeah, I might not have access to that because this is a free version of the site, but essentially you should have, let's see, let's take a look at this article. So managing the DNS records in your account. This is essentially where you would manage that kind of high level stuff. So pointing from domains to subdomains to stuff like that. So that's one place that I would look. Again, depending on exactly what you're trying to do. And you can also always, I mean, you can set up a 301 redirect. So essentially that would also be here in the dashboard. And you have to put in the old URL and the new URL, and you can redirect people to pages on your site, but you could also redirect people to other sites. So essentially, this would be one potential way to handle the redirects, but it might require you to set up multiple redirects for multiple pages. I don't know what it would look like if you redirected, like, yeah, if you just redirected kind of from the domain to the subdomain. I don't know if that would redirect all the pages under it, to be honest. I mean, you also have ways of setting up individual redirects using Wix location inside of your website. So one of those three is where I would be exploring. It really depends on exactly what you're trying to achieve. Yeah, so Farouk, if you want to clarify a bit what you're trying to do, maybe I can drill down a little bit more, but those are the three avenues I would be exploring for what you're trying to achieve. Okay, Moses. How can I set up my Wix page to be responsive? When I make the web browser smaller, it forces me to use scroll bars to see the remaining portions of the page. Very good question. So yeah, by the way, if anybody is just joining in, then we're doing a Q&A. Please feel free to say hi in the chat. Let us know where you're from and ask questions if you have any. And now I'm answering Moses' question about making a Wix page be responsive. So first of all, I have a video all about this. It's actually the most popular video for good reasons on the channel. So let me first of all drop that video here in the chat. Yeah, let me just find that video for you. And this is, you're not alone, if that's any consolation. So this is one of the most, yeah, I'll explain briefly just because I think it's valuable information for a lot of people. This is one of the biggest challenges that people have in the Wix editor. Essentially, the Wix editor is not responsive. It's something called adaptive. So you have these dotted lines here on the side, and essentially whatever is within those two dotted lines is going to show on all screen sizes, and whatever is not going to show on on smaller screens, essentially. And you have ways to kind of break this up by using strips. So I'm just going to search here for a strip. And I'm going to add a strip. Just add a blank strip. Yeah. And these strips you can break up into columns. And that essentially kind of breaks up the playing field that you can use in order to put your elements in and make it responsive. Not responsive, but adaptive in kind of a more adaptive way. And there are also some elements that can be stretched. So for example, if I add in, and this is something which I actually don't think I touch on in that video, so it's a nice little addition here for the people who came to the live stream, that there are elements that can be stretched. So for example, if I add in, let's say, a repeater, this repeater actually can be stretched to full width, and now this is going to be the full width of the site, even in the classic Wix editor. So you always want to check out when you're adding in new elements if you have that option. It can kind of give you a leg up. But for standard stuff, you're going to have to kind of go this way, and that's what I expand on more in the video that I just shared. So I'd recommend checking that out. And I see here we have some questions from Deep Purple, who is also a channel member. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you. And I'm going to go through the questions. So one from Deep Purple. I saw that you collaborated with Ryan to demonstrate how to create a custom product list page series. And you also have a separate video on how to redirect from your Wix store where the collections are connected to drop-down elements. How can I achieve a similar functionality but with a slider gallery on the home page and have it navigate to a separate collection page upon clicking an item? Let me read that again. I saw you collaborate. Okay. Create. Okay. Collections are connected to drop-down elements. Similar functionality with a slider. I think when you say collections, do you mean the product options? If you're talking about the product options, which were connected to drop-down elements, then I understand what you're talking about. How can I achieve a similar functionality but with a slider gallery on the home page and have it navigate to a separate collection page upon clicking an item? Oh, 1 second. Product list. Okay, no. I understand your question, Deep Purple. I thought you were talking about the individual product pages. You're talking about the uh, page which essentially has like the shop page, product list page, which has all of the products on it. And yeah, I mean, I filmed that video. Everybody here and see me. Let me know if the stream is breaking up at all. Okay, so let's try and address Deep Purple's question. That's interesting because it'll give us kind of a little hands-on. I'm going to close some tabs here because that might be affecting uh, what's kind of slowing us down. So let me close this. And I'm just going to close all the rest of the tabs here. And my laptop is getting really, really hot. Okay, I think that helped. I think closing all the tabs helped. I think it's a little more smooth now. Okay, so let's try and get a little hands-on here. So a slider gallery would essentially work kind of like a repeater. So let's say we have a repeater over here. I'm just going to add in a blank repeater. Yeah, so let's say that's representing our slider gallery. And we're going to need to install Wix stores here. So let me go ahead and install the Wix stores app. And then once it's installed, I'm going to need to make sure that we have some categories that we can play with essentially. And let's open up some of the documentation here that we're going to need. So essentially, we're going to need the Wix Stores Velo API. Let's see. Wix, just go here. I can find it myself in the documentation. Just go down here to Wix Stores. Wix Stores. And we're going to want to get the categories. So I think for that, so we have this collections. It's a little annoying because Wix sometimes uses the terminology collections, and sometimes it uses the terminology categories, which is essentially the same thing. But let's head over here, see if our Wix store is done coming in. It's taking its nice time. There we go. We have Wix stores, and I'm going to go here into the dashboard. And Deep Purple, if at any point you think that I'm not answering your question, then please do give more guidance. I'm going by what I understand your question to be. So here we have our catalog. And let's see if we have any categories here. Need to remember how to add a category. Oh, here they are, categories. Okay, so we have only one category now for all products. So let me add in, let's say, 2 more categories just to play with. So let's say we have here shoes. And I'm going to add in some products, even though they're not shoes. And I'll save that, and I'll add in another category. And we'll call this socks. And I don't know why I have footwear on my mind today, but... And we'll just go ahead and save that. Okay, so now we have 3 categories. We have all products, shoes, and socks. So the first step that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get all of those categories. So I'm going to first of all activate dev mode because we're going to need to do some coding. And feel free, anybody, if you have any questions about what I'm doing, please ask. And I'm going to go here to the back end, and I'm going to create a new web module. And I'll call this, let's call it categories. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build a simple query for the categories collection. So I'm going to get rid of all this. Zoom in here a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to be building essentially a query like this. Let me just copy this over. And I'm going to paste this over here. And we're going to need to import Wix data. So let me do that right over here. Import Wix data. Awesome. And here I'm going to get rid of these parameters. And let's say this will be get categories. And we're going to say here const collections query result equals to await, and this is going to need to be asynchronous. And then what we'll do is we'll return collection query result dot items. So let's test that out and see how that's going for us. I'm going to click the button over here, and I'm going to click run. And here we got our 3 categories. Okay, so here we got the name of the category, and we got the category page URL, which is what you can use to navigate essentially to that category page, which I think is one of the requirements in your question, right? How can I achieve similar functionality but with a slider gallery and a home page and have it navigate to separate collection page upon clicking the item? And again, for every collection here and category is the same thing. It's very confusing. I'm using categories wherever I can because Wix already has something else called collections in the CMS, so the less I can use collections, the better. But some places I don't have a choice because that's just what they named it. Okay, so essentially we built a web method which can get us all of our categories. Since I did not have to suppress auth here, this is possibly also a query that we could have run on the front end. I jumped to the back end because I foresaw we might have some access issues, but based on what we built here, this query could have probably been built on the front end. I'm personally like a very back-end inclined person because even if this was possible in the front end, you might want to build some other functionality around it that you would want on the back end, so it's just easier to build a lot of this stuff in the back end. But we have here our get categories function or method. And now what we're going to do is we're going to import that here on our home page, where I set up the repeater, which again should be the same principle as a slider in Wix Studio. And here, what we'll do is I'll call this repeater, let's say our categories repeater. And I will build a function here. So first of all, let me import before I forget. Let me import the web method that we built. So import get categories from backend / categories, I think I called it. Category. Maybe I spelled categories wrong. Let me see. Oh, maybe, oh, categories.web. Let me see. Yeah. Okay, remember that if you're using the new web methods, then you do have to write .web at the end. Otherwise, it'll assume that it's one of the JSW files. And then what I'll do here is I will create a new function. So let's say async function, populate categories repeater. Whoops. And it won't take any parameters. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll say, we'll set up the onReady for the repeater. So let's say categories repeater dot on item ready. And here we're going to have item and item data. And what I'll do is let me add in here just like some text so we have some visual, something visual to go with. So let me say here category name. And I'll put that over here. Again, I'm not a big focus on design. And this, so this I'll call the category container. And this I'll call the category name. And by the way, these curly brackets here, that's just a personal preference. Just it indicates to me visually that this is going to be something populated by data, but it's not required to make this actually work. And what we'll do here is inside of the onItemReady, we will set the category name dot text will be equal to item data. And I think it was dot name, but let's just double check. Name. Okay, this is the property that we're going to be using. So, sorry, over here. So dot name, and we'll set up an onClick for the container. So category container dot onClick, and what we'll be doing here is using Wix location. So let's import Wix location up here. Let me make sure you guys can see. Import Wix location front end, and then down over here, what we'll do is we'll say Wix location front end dot to, and here we'll have the item data dot. Good luck to me if I remember that. It is category page URL. I don't think I can copy this, so I'll have to try and remember. Category page URL. And then we're going to need to actually get our categories. So we'll say here const categories equals to await get categories. And then we'll assign that data to the repeater. So categories repeater dot data equals to categories. And I'll not forget to do what I usually forget to do, which is to run the function. So I'll run that here inside of the onReady. And let's take a look. This is something that I recommend checking on the published site because anything that has to do with navigation is just very hard to evaluate inside of the editor for me personally. Okay, so here we go. So we got each of the category names. So we have all products, shoes, socks. And if I click here on shoes, then it'll take me to the category page for shoes. Okay, so that's an implementation. Like anything in development, there's probably more than one way to do it. So this is just one way, and I hope that that answered your question. And I appreciate that because it gave me a chance to do something a little more hands-on as opposed to just theoretical, which is always enjoyable. Awesome. So, and okay, so I am going to welcome to Durham Skywriter. Thanks for joining in. And I have one more question here from Deep Purple. So in lesson 4, module 6, so this is most likely talking about my course on Udemy. I wasn't planning on it. I'll take the opportunity here to drop the link because I'm talking about it now because somebody asked. So yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Please check it out if you're interested in learning about kind of basic. No, basic is not the right word. If you want to become a front-end Wix developer, you're welcome to check out the course. So it touches on the foundations of Velo and JavaScript and using the Wix development environment up until the backend. Okay, so it doesn't go into backend, it doesn't go into some of the business logic APIs and stuff like that, but it will tell you how to deal with stuff like repeaters and custom forms and stuff like that. So I recommend checking it out if you're interested in that. So Deep Purple's asking a question about that course. So lesson 4, module 6, you mentioned avoiding datasets at all costs for a list page. I'm a bit confused about this advice and would appreciate some clarification. Okay, so I'm going to clarify. I don't remember my exact words from that module, but I will try and clarify this a bit. So first of all, I don't think that I said to avoid data sets at all costs. At least that's not my stance. I do think that data sets are really cool if you're building a no-code implementation for your website. So if you're just now, I used code for this repeater. If you don't want to use code or you can't use code, then Wix also has something called datasets. I'm just going to give some background for other people who are watching and might not understand all the terminology. So essentially, we also have a way to connect CMS collections using datasets. So you can go here and you can add in a dataset. You used to be able to do it here. Maybe because I haven't added a collection yet. Let me try adding a collection first. Let's just generate with AI. Test, test. Okay, so we created a CMS collection. And now what I want to do, it's so hard for me when they move things around because I'm so used to things being in certain places and then they move them. Oh, here we go. It was in main. So main, so you go to CMS, main, and here you can manage page connections. The reason also that this is hard for me because so actually the way that that data sets worked inside of let me just make sure, see if I'm zoomed out. Yeah, I'm zoomed out now. The way that data sets used to work in the Wix Classic editor up until like 2 months ago is that you used to like drag these kind of widgets. I'm sure most of you remember, like you drag these widgets onto the page and then you'd connect those widgets. But they changed it to be more like the Wix Studio experience where it opens like this panel here on the side. So there's no kind of visual indicator of the data set on the page. And I guess they moved some stuff around in the back end as well, like inside of the menus and stuff to accommodate this change. But basically, a data set is kind of like a portal between a Wix CMS collection, so the one like the one I just set up, and the visual elements inside of your editor. So I can choose a collection. So for example, I can choose this test collection that I just created, or I can also choose from the Wix App collection. So for example, I can choose this stores collection. And I can go ahead and I can create this data set. And then I can essentially connect between my repeater. Okay, so I select my repeater here, and I can, if I didn't have this panel open already, I could click this connect to CMS. So let me just close this, show you. I'll do a demo. So connect to CMS, and boom, it opens up the panel. And then I can choose a data set. So I can choose the stores collection data set that I just created, and I can click text, and I can connect this text to, let's say, name. And now, even if I get rid of this function here that I created, which was doing all the heavy lifting before, you can see that it's still, these are now connected, but not via code, via dataset. What is the issue here? So let's see, item background connects to. So now, one thing that I could do via code, but I can't do via the dataset, is to use this container as the vehicle for redirecting to a new page. So I can't, using a data set, allow the user to click on this container and go to a different page. There are ways around this. For example, we can add in a button. So if I add in a button over here, and I drag this button into the repeater, and I want to connect this button to data, so I can click action will go to the, I guess it would be the page URL. Let's say has a new window. So let me try publishing that. And let's check out our live site now. And I'm going to click view more, right? And it went to the category page, okay? So basically everything that I had just demonstrated via code, we could have achieved something pretty similar using a data set, okay? And it would require no code at all. And I think that this is great if the data set can do what you want. Okay, so I'm not saying do not use data sets at any cost, but you, with data sets, you have limitations. Okay, because it's a no-code tool, it can't let you do everything that code can let you do. And this, so I just demonstrated one thing, which was like I couldn't use the category container to let people navigate, but like if you're creative, like you can make a huge button that will cover the whole item, and then essentially the background will be a button, and then you can click it. And there are creative ways around a lot of the problems, but when you're doing more complex things like setting up different data filters and searches and very customized functionality using repeaters and stuff like that, sometimes you hit a wall, okay? And it's something that would require code. And in those scenarios where you do choose to implement code, I don't recommend mixing data sets and code. So for example, if you decided here, okay, so with a data set, I can connect the category names, that works fine. And then with code, I'll handle the redirect using the category container. That is something that I don't recommend doing because wires get crossed and you have a scenario where your code doesn't represent all of the functionality on the page. So you can look at your code and not have a full understanding of what's going on behind the scenes. And it just creates challenges as a developer, both in terms of interpreting your code, editing your code, and working on a team with other people with your code. And technically and practically, it could also just sometimes create conflicts between the data that's being connected via the data set and the data that's being manipulated via the code. And again, this is a personal preference. I don't think I've seen it strictly recommended like this anywhere in the Wix documentation. But I believe that if you're going and doing something with code with regard to your data, then you should not have a data set involved. Again, if you're doing a no-code approach and you're doing something like I just set up with the button and the categories and whatnot, and that's it, and that's all you need, and you're not using any code, go for it. But if you are using code, then I would recommend going all the way code. And sometimes I'll choose to use code from the beginning just because when you're building a project, you're not always sure about every single thing that you're going to need. And when you're building with code, you're leaving the door open to make more changes in the future. Whereas if I build this first with a data set and then I decide that I need some kind of feature that needs code and I'm following my own principles, then I will need to convert everything into code, and that's just a lot of extra work. So usually the only scenarios where I personally, as somebody who can code and likes to code, will use data sets is if that's how it was already built to begin with. And I estimate that making a small change with code will bring more value in terms of cost and time efficiency as opposed to rewriting everything with code. And I'm also kind of leaving the door open for changes by somebody who might not know how to code. So that's kind of the mindset. And to clarify, lesson 4, module 6. So again, I'm not saying that datasets should be avoided at all costs, but that if you are going to be implementing code on your page, I do recommend going full code as opposed to trying to mix code and datasets. Even though it could seem that datasets are very easy to use and can do a lot with very little work, I believe that you pay for that later on when you're trying to add more complexity. So I hope that that clarifies. And now I'm going to see what else we have going on here. And let's see. So I have another question from Moses. A Deep Purple, by the way, please let me know if everything I just showed for the past 20 minutes helped you at all. And yeah, so I have another question from Moses. I have Prince Lion helping answer some questions here. And so Moses, I'm going to go back to your question. I just see some other people. And I see maybe Prince Lion answered, so that's great. I see here Reed has a few questions, I think. So let me go ahead and read those. In one of your videos, you refer to one of the page objects by the name assigned by Wix, probably via JS code in an embedded HTML code block, for example, div ID, etc. Probably the video two-way communication between them. That would make a lot of sense. How can we be sure that this name remains the same for each time on the site is saved and published? Isn't Wix a builder platform that converts content the editor into HTML, CSS, JS code that gets executed and doesn't actually use names we assign in the editor? Excellent question. I will first try and explain what the question is for other people who are following along. So this is our Wix website. And behind the scenes, this is all HTML and CSS and JavaScript, just like any other website. So if we open up the developer tools here, we can actually dive into specific elements and see what their IDs are. So for example, if I wanted to go into one of these, one of these elements here, so we can see here that, for example, we have this div. I'm trying to find one that I would kind of remember. See if I can find like the entire, yeah, let's take this. This looks like the entire repeater. So essentially, Reed is asking about this ID. And this is a random ID that Wix assigns to this div, and we don't have any control over it via Velo code or anywhere else. And the reason that this ID is important is because if we wanted to add some custom code that manipulates the DOM, so that would be via the dashboard, settings, custom code, the only way that we can access this element is via this ID or its class or some selector. Okay, so some HTML selector. We can't access it using the IDs that we have here. Okay, we can't use these IDs because these IDs are inaccessible to the best of my knowledge. I would love to learn otherwise inside of our actual HTML of our page. So that's the question, okay? Or that's what the question is about. And specifically, so I have some videos where I demonstrate how to do those kind of manipulations. And the question is, how do I know that this is not going to change? And the answer to the question is that I don't know for sure, but in all of my experimentation, I have seen that it remains consistent. So that means that once you add an element to your site, as long as it's the same element, even if you publish your site multiple times, I haven't seen that these IDs change. So first, let's just do like a few experiments together. So this is the ID of this element over here. You can see what's being highlighted kind of on the left when I go over it. So let me copy that ID, and I'm just going to paste it here in the browser for now. And let me close all these because we're done with them. And I'm just going to refresh the page. And I'm going to try and find that same element here. So let me go ahead. I can even just search here and paste it in. And there we go. Okay, so we found here, this is still the same element. Okay, so that's test level 1. So even if I refresh the page, we're reloading the website, the IDs stay consistent. Okay, again, this isn't empirical proof per se. Like, I mean, technically it could be that I'm just getting lucky. But I do believe that if you check this, let's say 5 times and it's always the same, and if I check this again, let's say in a Chrome browser, it's the same, then we can establish that these IDs essentially remain the same as long as you don't republish your site. But now I'm going to show you again that even if we do republish the site, so let me go here, and I'm going to go ahead and click publish. Okay, so I'm like releasing a new version of the site, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to refresh here again. I'll do a few refreshes just to make sure, and then Control F, and the ID essentially remains the same. Okay, so the answer to the question is, how do I know? Because I've tried. And again, this isn't something that I've officially found in any kind of Wix documentation, but it seems to be from experience that that is a truth, that these IDs do stay consistent and they can be trusted in terms of selecting things via the DOM. So I hope that that answers the question. Bye, Moses. Thanks for joining in. My pleasure. And the purple, you're also very welcome. And Reed, I'm happy to agree. Thank you, Mr. Samadon. Okay, so I think that we have addressed all of the questions for today. And we're just over an hour, which is the time that I had allotted for this Q&A. So first of all, thank you all for joining in. It was great to chat with you. I hope you found this interesting and informative. And this is a QA that happens once a month. So I'll see you again in sometime in the first week of August for another QA. So please prepare your questions. And again, I'll be answering any questions that are provided and giving priority to channel members. So you're welcome to check out the channel memberships. And there are all different kinds of other perks that come with being a channel member. Access to the course and that I showed on Udemy, so you could also access it through YouTube, and videos you can see early. So usually I have like videos like 3 weeks going forward. Yeah, that's stuff that you can see as a member. So I recommend checking that out. And I do see, Sela, I see you have a question, but I'm actually just wrapping up. Oh, I see two. um, okay, I'll give 5 minutes, 5 more minutes if there are any quick questions that are coming in, because I see we have some people just joining in now. So I'll answer Sela's question of what are landing pages. So a landing page is a page on your site with a very, very specific purpose. And typical ways to identify a landing page would be sometimes it doesn't even have like a header and a footer. So it's a page that you can't essentially use to navigate to other parts of the website sometimes. And it's often used in a very specific, let's say, advertising campaign. And it's a page on your site with a very, very specific purpose. And for example, like if you're trying to get people's emails to sign up to like a newsletter, or if you're trying to sell like one single product, those are typical use cases for a landing page. And I'm going to answer this one last question from Asamirid. Is it possible to do a bento box grid using CMS and repeaters? I think in Wix Studio, I want to say yes. In Wix Studio, you do have the option to create layouts that are a little bit more like bento boxes. I'm not sure, though, if that correlates with a repeater or not. So I would have to double check. I would say, in terms of like continuing research on that, I would say look into Wix Studio. I don't think that you would get something close to that with Wix Classic, unless you were doing a custom element or something along those lines. Thank you, Reed. Thanks for all the support. And I'm really going to be wrapping up now. I gave those two last questions just because people hopped on at the end. So thank you very much for joining. There will be another opportunity next month. There are also ways to reach out directly towards me via the site. Thank you very much for the tip. Thank you very much, Asamirid. And yeah, there are ways to find me even not during these live streams. You can use the Wix Wiz website forum. You can reach out via the Contact Us forum. You can book a consultation. And there are ways to get help throughout the month. So thank you again for joining, and I will see you next time.